With the outside of the house completed, now's a good time to check to make sure that all your layers are complete and that each of your individual pieces are grouped together. If they're not, we can always change them by putting them back onto another layer. For example, I'll take my mannequin at this point and I'm going to move it from layer 0 to the floor plan layer, which now can be moved. You never want to have anything on layer 0 so that you can hide all the pieces of your drawing without having to switch the active layer. Remember, whatever circle is highlighted black is the active layer that you'll be drawing on. The first thing we're going to want to do is to cut all the openings out of the outside of the house. If we look at the image of the house, you can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 windows on the front, as well as one door up front. Unlike the previous videos, we must first cut holes inside of wall grouping before we can put windows in. If you notice, the outside of the house is a group. As you know, we cannot draw on a group and push into it or delete any faces of it. If we do this, we will be unable to edit the roof at all. In order to cut the holes out, let's first hide the roof so we can see inside of the house, and also let's double click to go into edit mode of the group. You'll notice that when I'm in edit mode, this window has a flickering face to indicate that it's outside of the group. If I were to draw another window here, you'll notice it is not flickering because it is on the inside of the group and I can cut a hole out. However, unlike the other house, we cannot simply click and delete. We must pull this to inside to the back edge of the house. You can either do your push-pull tool for 6 inches because that's the distance of the walls, or click, let go of your mouse, orbit around, and grab the back line, edge, or the back face to make sure you go all the way through. Now, one tip to do this, because since we're going to cut out all the windows and all the doors first, would be to right-click on the group and explode it. This way, you don't have to worry about continuously going in and out of the group to cut your holes. You will be able to cut them without worrying that you are not inside of the group. This will only work, however, if your other groups are in fact all grouped together, as at one point we're going to need to go back, triple click, and group the walls back together. Align the windows is simple as long as we use our floor plan. Using our floor plan will help us line up the windows exactly where they are so we get a look exactly like you see here. I'm going to hit my top-down view, and then I'm going to hide my roof, I'm going to hide my walls, and my porch. You can see now the openings for the walls and windows on the first floor. Now I need to see where those windows are, but since the house is on top of it, it can be difficult. Let's go up to our view, face style, and let's go to our wireframe view. This will allow us to see the walls around the house without losing sight of where the windows are. I'll hit my top-down view again, and now I'll use a couple guidelines from the inside edge of the wall here, and since I have a line down here, I can find the midpoint right down the center of the window. I don't know the exact size here, but if I move over, this comes to about 2.2 or 2.3. I'll use 2.3, press return, for 2.3 inches, 2.3 feet, and over again to 2 feet 3 inches. Let's stop here so we can come back and do the doors later. These guidelines will now help us assist put the windows in by going back to our view and getting our shaded look. We'll now see at the bottom that I have my 3 guidelines. I'm going to put these guidelines inside of this group. So, as we spoke before, I'm going to right click and I'm going to explode this group, allowing me to cut my holes out all in one shot. Now I will drag over and snap to the other guidelines, marking where they are. You'll notice they go all the way up the front wall, which will be useful since the window above it is at the same height. From From here, you will figure out where you want your window and put it in place. As another guide, we're going to take a guideline and measure the whole house, which is 18 feet. I'm going to come down to 9 feet and mark it. So this is I know halfway through the house, and I can determine where I want my windows. Whatever size you choose to make your window opening, make sure it's a round number. Put the window in and cut it out. And the first floor window, oops, all the way back, 6 inches. You can do the same with the top window, making sure that you are a relative size to the drawing. Also, don't make the size of the window bigger than the black part that you see on the inside. The tan is molding that we'll do later after the fact. Now if we go to put these windows in, you know how they're nice and evenly spaced, which we can do by using a tool we've used in the past. Wherever you decide to place them, I'll just use 2 feet here and 2 feet here. And coming down from the roof wherever you think it's fit, that's about, go 3 feet and 3 feet. Now that actually is a little small. You can actually change your sizes to make it larger. And then to get these nice and lined up, after we draw our first window opening, make sure your guidelines are up against and on the wall here.
Alexis Rocco.
And my guides weren't lining up, so I deleted them. And what I forgot to do was to take this 9-foot line all the way across the house. So in order to do it at the same height, I'm going to come up from the bottom here.
Jillian Kelly, please call extension 180.
And come from the back edge and snap here. Now if this gets confusing at this point, you may want to take this front line out for the time being. And now we'll do our guidelines. We'll just make it 1 foot this time. Maybe 2 feet down from the top. And whatever your window size is, you can select it, use your copy move tool, and then like we learned, you can backslash for 2 and mark your windows nice and even. Once these push through, we'll have a nice opening for our top windows. These are probably a little bit big relative to the drawing. You can adjust yours accordingly. Another thing we must do is we need to get rid of this line going around the front. The deck for this particular house is a little taller than we can put to our model based on the way we designed it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around and I'm going to take off those lines. And so now we can fit our door opening inside this wall. Your door opening should be 6 feet 8 inches tall by 3 feet wide, which is the standard height of a door. 6 feet 8 inches by 3 feet. So there's your door size. We want to make this an appropriate size and fit relative to the house, so a good idea would be to center it upon the steps. We can approximate this, so I'll take my tape measure tool, and from a seam edge, I'll just kind of approximate to the middle of the stairs, and then I will move my door into position. However, do not put the door directly in the bottom, as it will interact with the wall grouping and we won't be able to move it. So I'll give myself a guideline, and we'll make this about 1 foot tall, and this is where we'll position our door. Door in place, push pull, and we now have our door opening. At this point, you'll probably want to move over and add your last window in this position. We should use the same size window that we used over here, but remember this was actually made up of 2 smaller windows, so one of these windows will be fit into place over here to give you all the holes for the front. Then we can go back and add the window in the center here, which should all be aligned the same distance across the top. So you want to align the window across the top of the rest of the windows. So to do this, you can just again use your guidelines give yourself the top of whatever that window is, as well as a horizontal guideline to figure out where you're going to place it. We also have another door. We have two doors actually. We can just put one in this little alcove. This will be 6 by 3 and centered. And now we have the deck to contend with. What we can do for our deck is use the lines that we already have here to trace out where it actually goes. But now remember, at this point you should have all your groups cut out, so now would be a good time to regroup the walls, as the porch will be separate from the deck itself. So I'm going to make this a group, and now we are going to put the porch on the porch grouping. Remember, we need to activate the porch. However, in this case, we got to be careful that our windows are not too tall here. And I'm actually going to take this roof and move it to the roof grouping. And we'll just make the porch the actual porch that we're going to draw. Using your outline all the way around, we will delete the guides for now and begin to draw our porch. Now remember, since this wall grouping goes away, we'll have to draw lines all the way around in order to see them. So let's go in on our porch grouping. Now I'm just going to start to trace around the bottom of the porch. Making sure I snap my lines. All the way around. And when it's connected, it'll all pull in. Now I guess we'll pull this up a little bit underneath the door. Let's do this for about 8 inches. And then what I want to do here is I want to give a little bit more detail to it, so I'm going to press Control before I bring it up. And then bring it back up to top and fur it over with the inside edge of the door. And then you can continue to add some detail to it. You can pull the sides out so they overhang just a little bit. Or begin to customize it however you see fit. I'm going to go over 2 inches, 2 inches, 2 inches. Now you can build a little step up to the porch here. We can also bring our roof back, and now we can create our poles that go up to each of the roof, as you see in the picture. 1, 2, 3, 4, and each of these should be a component. You want to make them a component so that as you copy them, make it off. As you copy each component for each of the rails, oh, we should make this a group first. Let's group the entire deck. There we go. Now we can make this a component. Whatever size you choose to make it. And we can bring it up. And if it's just a little bit too big here, we can just pull it, and put it back. Now you have the option to customize this using the Follow Me tool by creating a design and wrapping it around. These poles can then be brought down to the edges. Each side of the door has one. So we'll copy and move these over. And then we'll copy these down to the edge. And I'll do \2 to make sure they're evenly spaced. You could add one more here if you like. And with the front porch nearing assembly, you can then go back and put a railing in between each of the components. Move it over to the railing with some slats if you like to further customize it. We'll now create some simple windows. Now when you created your window openings, they should have all been the same size since they are all the same size in the pictures. The top windows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, are the same size, and the bottom windows are all the same size as well. Creating the windows will be slightly different now because in the past when we created them, we just made them flat, whereas now we have a 6-inch gap to fill. To do this, let's come over to our side and not actually draw on the opening itself. The distance of these windows were, that's an ugly number, half of this. Okay, so half of here is about 2.3. So each window is going to be 2 foot 3 inches wide by another ugly number. But we'll scale them down at the end. Anyway, to make these windows, I'm going to start with a 2 foot by 3 foot by, we'll just say 3 for now, right there. That's twice. 2 feet 3 inches by 3. Okay. Now, because this has to fit into the opening, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this back 6 inches so that it fits perfectly in that group. Now, you notice right now I'm still in the porch layer, which doesn't really matter because we're going to move it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to make this a group, which you don't have to do just yet, but I'm going to move it in and make sure that it fits into my opening by scaling it. So I fit there, fit there, and then I'm just going to pull down now to lock the exact size. Now I'll move it back out and actually make my window. This is the window that actually will fit into the opening. So I'm going to blow this window up and create a window inside of it. I'm going to make an outer frame at about 3 inches, as well as a frame in the back about 3 inches. With the window thickness set, we want to push-pull each side for 3 inches, which will cause our face to go away, which is fine for now because we still have our guidelines inside. If we take our pencil and just draw a line across, this will give us the size of the window that we want with the glass, which can be then made translucent when we're finished. For now, let's leave it like that. And now you can design a very simple window around inside of this frame like we've done in the past, whether you divide it in half or whatever slats you tend to make. Remember, they must be offset so they can be push-pulled. As if you don't push-pull them, you're not going to see them. Pull them out. But as you notice, as I pull them out, it creates a hole in the back, which is not what we want. So when you pull them out, press Control first. And I'm going to pull these out for about 1 inch. And if you do that, your back still remain there. And you can pull those out for 1 inch. And now the front and the back of the window are in good shape. Don't forget, if you color these first, it would be a little bit easier to get them into position and color all the sides at once. I'll just color my insides glass all the way through. And now I'm ready to make this a component. With the component made, with the window finished, we can now begin to add it into our house. At this point, it doesn't matter if we put it on top of the group or in the group, but I'm going to put it on top of the group for right now. We'll move it in later. If I drag it over and drop it into place, it should fit perfectly. Make sure you grab the window here and drop it into position. Now, if we had the same window size up front, we could just drag them and drop them in place as well. But since I made my windows without measuring, are a lot bigger, so I will just scale mine up. Yours should already be the same. And then you can copy, move them down. Snapping each corner to corner, they should align perfectly. In the pictures, you'll notice you have molding around the side. So I'm going to go into each group and add this molding. Remember that each one should change into the component. I'll triple click to get in edit mode. And once I'm inside, I'm going to uncheck the inside edges. And then with my offset tool, I can add my molding to the outside, and it should come on all of them. And now you'll have two different levels of molding to color. The outer and the inner. Now if you notice down here, the same thing happened. Now we actually don't want that to happen to those windows because they're a smaller size, and there's two of them right next to each other. So to fix that, I'm going to go back to right when I copied my first window to here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this one and I'm going to copy it. But then I'm going to right click on each one and say make unique. Make unique basically means that they're no longer going to react how these two react, and they are their own independent windows. So now if we go into edit mode for each of these, we can change them individually. I'm actually going to explode both of them and carefully just select the two windows here to be one component. And then I'll edit it up so it looks a little better. I'll take away the center line. I'll grab my outer lines and give the same offset. Your windows don't have to look exactly the same, but they should fit in the opening. And this offset would be the same as you did for the top. And then your push-pull. We're not going through all the steps now, as you should be able to complete the ones that we have already done to date. And no. Now you see our windows are in place. And this would be a good time to now add them to the wall grouping, so that when the walls disappear, they disappear. So I'll just hold shift. I'd select my other windows as well. And I'd move them to the walls and check that they go away. Now we have some lines on the inside that didn't go away. So what we want to do with these is to select these as well. Or these are wired compute. And from being on layer 0, we'll send those to the walls as well. And with that, we should be able to finish the rest of the windows and the doors. Same process for the door and the side window over here. Before we turn to the interior, we're going to roll around to the back to do some custom work on the back of the house. If you pull up the image of the back of the house from your file, you'll notice it's mainly symmetrical, with simple windows, a part that juts out from the center of the house, as well as a deck. Using this will give us clues to how we can create the back of our house. For example, what you see down here is the guidelines for creating the deck. This is the size of the deck, so if I pop in my top-down view, and give myself some guides, and I'll make the deck across a nice neat number. So we'll make it about 18 feet. And then my guides for my deck that I can use, and we'll make it by 9 feet. I'm also going to mark my 9-foot mark, which represents the center of the house, as well as the center going this way. So now I know where my first and second floor ends, my deck will be, and where windows and doors will be placed approximately, since they are all symmetrical. So by using the floor plan and the pictures that you see, you should try to reconstruct the back of the house as close as possible with as much detail as possible. While it's very easy to make a simple deck by going like this, it's not very indicative of the skills we've learned. This should be made up of multiple groups. In fact, this could even be made to look like deck boards. I'm drawing one small deck board, making that a component. Push pulling it out. And then creating a nice spacing in between, about maybe 0.5 inches. And using those lines times, we'll just say times 35, to create a simple deck across the back. The more components you use, the more groups you use, the more level of detail you can obtain. Remember, if this is a little bit too tall, you can actually too far out. We know that they're all components and they can be moved in and lined up to the end of the deck using our guidelines and lines that we've already drawn. Now that I've added a simple deck, I also threw on a separate part to the roof here. This was done by going to my roof grouping and using lines and push-pull to create an arc. Now this isn't very accurate to what the drawing says, as it comes all the way across to the deck. However, it's a rough estimate, and you can then make it more realistic as you go. Remember that since it is part of the roof, you make it in the roof grouping, and you have some new parts back here which you could all again group together once it's all done with your entire deck and make a new layer for the deck itself. Complete the back as best you can, adding as much detail as possible, making sure everything you have, everything you make is inside of a group, and each of those groups is on its own layer. I would add this back one to the deck, and now I'm just going to group this part, but actually when the entire deck was finished, it would all be grouped together and made onto the deck grouping. Keeping your drawing organized will really help you to create more detail as you go through.